कैसी हो तुम?
अब सुकून है।
जब तुमने उस आदमी को
वो अमर लोगों में सबसे पहली है।
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The Old Guard 2 represents Netflix's ambitious attempt to expand upon the successful foundation laid by its 2020 predecessor. Yet the sequel finds itself navigating the treacherous waters of franchise expectations while grappling with the inherent challenges of continuing a story about immortal warriors. Directed by Victoria Mahoney, who took over from Gina Prince Bythewood, the film carries the weight of following up a pandemic-era hit that resonated with audiences hungry for escapist entertainment. The sequel reunites Charlize Theron with her original cast members, including Chi-Chi Lane, Matthias Schoenaerts, Marwan Kenzari, Luca Marinelli, Veronica Injuos, and Shweta Giafar, while introducing new faces like Henry Golding and Uma Thurman to the mythology. Released on July 2, 2025, the film immediately positioned itself as a major streaming event, though critical reception proved to be considerably more lukewarm than its predecessor, with many reviewers noting that it felt inferior to the original film. The story continues to explore themes of immortality, purpose, and the burden of living through centuries while protecting humanity from various threats, but does so through a lens that attempts to deepen the mythology while potentially overcomplicating what made the first film successful. The production journey of The Old Guard 2 was notably extended, with filming stretching across multiple years and additional photography conducted as late as October 2024, indicating the complex post-production process required to bring the sequel's ambitious vision to fruition. Victoria Mahoney, known for her work on Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and various television projects, brought her own directorial sensibilities to the material while working from a screenplay by Greg Rucka and Sarah L. Walker, with Rucka returning from the original comic series and first film adaptation. The director's approach to the sequel involved what she described as being drawn to the beautiful array of characters that had a global sense of appeal, suggesting her intention to expand the international and cultural dimensions that made the first film distinctive. The extended production timeline allowed for refinement of action sequences, character development, and the integration of new cast members into the established group dynamic, though it also reflected the challenges inherent in crafting a worthy successor to a beloved original. The film's score underwent changes during production, with composers Max Ehrage and Ruth Barrett initially replacing Volker Bertelmann and Dustin O'Halloran from the first film, before Ehrage was subsequently replaced by Stefan Thum, indicating the careful attention paid to the musical landscape that would support the sequel's emotional and action beats. At the heart of The Old Guard 2 lies the continuing evolution of Andy, Charlize Theron's ancient warrior who has spent millennia protecting humanity while wrestling with the existential weight of her immortality. The sequel finds Andy and her team facing what appears to be their most significant challenge. Yet, as they confront a powerful new enemy that threatens not only their mission to protect humanity, but their very existence as a group. The narrative explores the resurfacing of a long-lost immortal, a development that complicates their current mission while forcing the team to confront aspects of their shared history that have remained buried for centuries. This plot device serves multiple purposes within the sequel structure, providing both immediate dramatic tension and deeper exploration of the immortal warriors' extended backstories, while also introducing questions about the nature of their immortality and whether there might be others like them scattered across time and geography. Arc After Arc in the sequel specifically deals with what the promotional materials describe as a battle 500 years in the making, suggesting that the events of the second film have roots that stretch far back into the group's collective past, potentially to periods of history that predate their formation as a cohesive unit dedicated to protecting humanity from various supernatural and human threats. The ensemble cast dynamics receive significant attention in The Old Guard 2, with each returning character given opportunities to develop beyond their roles in the original film, while new additions like Henry Golding and Uma Thurman bring fresh energy and complications to the established group. Dynamic. Chi-Chi Lane's Nile, the newest member of the Immortal Warriors, continues her journey of adaptation to her newfound immortality while grappling with the moral complexities of their mission and the personal cost of leaving her previous life behind. The relationships between Joe and Nicky, Marwan Kenzari, and Luca Marinelli receive further development, building upon the acclaimed representation of their centuries, spanning romance that resonated strongly with audiences in the first film. Matthias Skilnar-Ed's Booker faces the consequences of his betrayal from the first film while potentially seeking redemption within the group, creating internal tension that must be resolved alongside external threats. Veronica Ingos Quynh, whose presence was established in the first film's conclusion, plays a crucial role in the sequel's exploration of what happens when immortals are separated for extended periods and the psychological impact of isolation on beings who are meant to live forever. Chiwetel Ejiofor's return suggests that the mortal world's relationship with these immortal protectors remains complex and potentially antagonistic, reflecting real-world concerns about accountability and oversight of individuals with extraordinary abilities. Victoria Mahoney's directorial approach to The Old Guard 2 represents both continuity with and departure from Gina Prince Bythewood's work on the original film, as she attempts to maintain the grounded, character-driven approach that made the first film successful while expanding the scope and scale of the Immortal Warriors world. Mahoney's background in television and her experience working on major franchise properties brought a different sensibility to the material, one that emphasizes the global nature of the Immortal Warriors mission while deepening the personal relationships that anchor the story's emotional core. Her approach to action sequences maintains the visceral, practical nature of the original film's combat while potentially expanding into larger set pieces that reflect the increased budget and scope of the sequel. The director's vision for the sequel involved exploring what she described as the character's renewed sense of purpose, suggesting that the events of the first film and the time that has passed since have fundamentally changed how the Immortal Warriors view their mission and their place in the world. Mahoney's interpretation of the source material appears to emphasize the international and multicultural aspects of the story, reflecting both the global reach of NestFlix as a platform and the increasingly international nature of major entertainment properties. The action sequences in The Old Guard 2 build upon the foundation established by the original film's acclaimed fight choreography, while attempting to raise the stakes through larger-scale confrontations and more elaborate set pieces. The Immortal Warriors' unique fighting style, which incorporates their ability to heal from mortal wounds into their combat tactics, receives further development as the sequel explores how centuries of experience have refined their approach to violence and conflict resolution. The film's action design must balance the spectacular nature expected from a big-budget sequel with the grounded, realistic approach that distinguished the original from more fantastical superhero properties. Each character's individual fighting style and preferred weapons receive attention, from Andy's ancient battle axe to Nile's adaptation of modern military training to her new immortal capabilities, while the team's coordinated combat tactics reflect their centuries of experience fighting together. The sequel's action sequences also serve narrative purposes beyond pure spectacle, as they reveal character relationships, advance plot points, and explore the psychological impact of immortality on warriors who have experienced countless battles across multiple lifetimes. The integration of new cast members into the established action framework presents both opportunities and challenges, as the choreography must accommodate different fighting styles while maintaining the cohesive team dynamic that made the original film's action sequences so effective. The mythology and world-building elements of The Old Guard 2 expand significantly beyond the foundation laid in the original film, as the sequel attempts to answer questions about the origin and nature of the Immortal Warriors' abilities while introducing new complications to their existence. The resurfacing of additional Immortals raises questions about how many others might exist across the world and throughout history, while also exploring the psychological impact of isolation on beings who are meant to be part of a connected group. The film's exploration of immortality as both gift and curse receives deeper treatment as characters grapple with the long-term consequences of outliving everyone they care about while being unable to form lasting connections with mortals who will inevitably age and die. The sequel's approach to the supernatural elements maintains the original film's relatively grounded tone while expanding the scope of what is possible within the established universe, potentially introducing new threats and allies that reflect the global nature of the Immortal Warriors mission. The relationship between the Immortal Warriors and the mortal world becomes more complex as the sequel explores themes of accountability, oversight, and the question of whether beings with extraordinary abilities should be subject to government control or international regulation. Character development represents one of the sequel's primary focuses, as each member of the Immortal Warrior team faces personal challenges that reflect their individual relationships with immortality and their role within the group dynamic. Andy's character arc specifically deals with questions of leadership and legacy, as she confronts the possibility that her role as the group's leader might need to evolve as circumstances change and new threats emerge. The sequel explores how centuries of leadership have affected her psychologically while also examining what it means to potentially pass that responsibility to newer members of the team. Nile's continued adjustment to immortality provides opportunities to explore themes of identity, belonging, and the cost of leaving one's previous life behind, while her military background offers unique perspectives on the team's mission and methods. The romantic relationship between Joe and Nicky receives further development as the sequel examines how a century-spanning partnership maintains its vitality and connection across different historical periods and changing circumstances. Booker's potential redemption arc addresses themes of forgiveness, trust, and the possibility of making amends for past betrayals while contributing meaningfully to the team's mission and relationships. The introduction of new characters, particularly Henry Golding and Uma Thurman's roles, serves to both expand the mythology and create new dramatic possibilities for the established characters to navigate. These additions to the cast represent different aspects of the Immortal Warriors world, potentially including allies, enemies, or complex figures whose loyalties and motivations remain ambiguous throughout much of the film. The integration of new characters into the established group dynamic requires careful balance, as they must feel essential to the story while not overwhelming the relationships and character development that audiences have invested in from the original film. Uma Thurman's casting specifically suggests a significant role that leverages her experience in action films and her ability to portray complex, morally ambiguous characters who might serve as either mentor or antagonist depending on the story's needs. Henry Golding's involvement indicates the sequel's commitment to expanding its international cast and potentially exploring new geographical and cultural contexts for the Immortal Warriors mission. The challenge for these new characters lies in feeling integral to the story rather than simply additive, requiring careful integration into both the action sequences and emotional core of the narrative. The technical aspects of The Old Guard 2 reflect both the increased budget and scope of the sequel, while maintaining the visual and aesthetic approach that distinguished the original film from other entries in the superhero and action genres. The cinematography must balance intimate character moments with large-scale action sequences while maintaining visual coherence across different international locations and time periods that the story potentially explores. The production design expands beyond the relatively contained locations of the original film to encompass a broader geographical scope that reflects the global nature of the Immortal Warriors' mission and the international threats they face. Costume design becomes particularly important in a sequel that potentially explores different historical periods while also updating the contemporary looks of the established characters to reflect their evolution and changing circumstances. The visual effects work must seamlessly integrate the characters' healing abilities and other supernatural elements while maintaining the grounded, realistic tone that distinguished the original from more fantastical entries in similar genres. The film's color palette and visual style build upon the original's distinctive look while potentially expanding into new visual territories that reflect the sequel's broader scope and different directorial sensibilities. The themes explored in The Old Guard 2 build upon the foundation laid by the original film while potentially delving deeper into questions about purpose, legacy, and the responsibility that comes with extraordinary abilities. The sequel continues to examine what it means to live forever while being tasked with protecting a humanity that constantly changes and evolves around the immortal warriors. Questions of identity and belonging receive significant attention as characters who have lived for centuries must continually redefine themselves and their relationships with both each other and the world they protect. The theme of family, both chosen and biological, remains central to the narrative as the immortal warriors navigate their relationships with each other while potentially discovering new connections to their past or future. The sequel also explores themes of redemption and forgiveness, particularly through characters who must make amends for past actions while proving their commitment to the group's mission and values. The question of what constitutes a meaningful life when that life potentially has no end receives continued exploration as characters grapple with the existential challenges of immortality. The film's exploration of violence and its consequences takes on additional complexity in a sequel that must balance spectacular action sequences with meaningful examination of what it means to be warriors in a constantly changing world. The immortal characters' relationship with violence reflects their centuries of experience while also acknowledging the psychological toll that constant conflict takes even on beings who cannot permanently die from physical wounds. The sequel potentially examines how the nature of warfare and conflict has evolved throughout history while exploring how the immortal warriors have adapted their methods and philosophy to remain effective protectors of humanity. Questions about the morality of intervention and the right to make decisions that affect entire populations become more complex as the scale of the threats the immortal warriors face potentially expands beyond individual conflicts to more global concerns. The film's approach to violence must also navigate contemporary sensitivities about action cinema while maintaining the visceral impact that made the original film's combat sequences so memorable and effective. The international scope of The Old Guard 2 reflects both NestFlix's global reach and the inherently international nature of immortal characters who have lived across multiple cultures and historical periods. The sequel's casting and locations potentially span multiple continents and cultures, acknowledging that immortal warriors would naturally develop connections and knowledge across different societies and time periods. This international approach creates opportunities to explore different cultural perspectives on concepts like duty, sacrifice, and the relationship between individual action and collective responsibility. The film's production across multiple countries and its incorporation of different languages and cultural contexts reflects the streaming platform's commitment to creating content that resonates with global audiences while maintaining narrative coherence. The challenge lies in integrating these international elements organically into the story rather than simply adding them for the sake of global appeal, requiring careful attention to how different cultural contexts inform the characters' perspectives and actions. The sequel's treatment of contemporary social and political issues builds upon the original film's subtle incorporation of real-world concerns, while potentially expanding into more complex territory as the immortal warriors navigate an increasingly connected but also increasingly divided world. The film's approach to issues like international cooperation, surveillance technology, and the ethics of intervention must balance entertainment value with meaningful exploration of themes that resonate with contemporary audiences. The Immortal Warrior's perspective on historical events and social change provides unique opportunities to examine how different time periods have approached similar challenges, while also exploring how their experiences inform their approach to current problems. The sequel potentially explores how immortal beings maintain hope and purpose in the face of humanity's repeated mistakes and conflicts, while also examining their role as both observers and participants in historical change. The balance between addressing serious themes and maintaining the entertainment value expected from a big-budget action film requires careful navigation of potentially sensitive topics, while ensuring that the story remains accessible to diverse audiences. The musical score and sound design of The Old Guard 2 build upon the atmospheric foundation laid by the original film while potentially expanding into new sonic territories that reflect the sequel's broader scope and different directorial approach. The changes in composers during production, from Max Eierudge and Ruth Barrett to the eventual collaboration between Barrett and Stephen Thumb, suggest careful attention to finding the right musical voice for the sequel's tone and themes. The score must balance intimate character moments with large-scale action sequences while maintaining thematic continuity with the original film's musical identity. The integration of different cultural musical elements reflects the international scope of the story and the diverse backgrounds of both the characters and the global audience. The sound design for the action sequences must support the visceral impact of the combat, while also serving the narrative purposes of revealing character relationships and advancing plot points through the rhythm and intensity of the conflicts. The film's approach to diversity and representation continues the original film's commitment to inclusive casting while potentially expanding into new areas of representation that reflect the global nature of the story and the streaming platform's international audience. The casting of actors from different ethnic and cultural backgrounds serves both narrative purposes, as immortal warriors would naturally reflect the diversity of the human populations they have lived among, and contemporary audience expectations for inclusive entertainment. The sequel's treatment of LGBTQ+ representation, building upon the acclaimed relationship between Joe and Nicky from the original film, potentially expands to explore how immortal beings navigate questions of identity and relationships across centuries and changing social contexts. The film's approach to gender representation, anchored by Charlize Theron's powerful performance as Andy, continues to explore themes of female leadership and agency while potentially introducing new female characters who bring different perspectives and abilities to the story. The challenge lies in ensuring that diverse representation serves the story organically rather than feeling tokenistic, requiring careful integration of different perspectives and backgrounds into the narrative structure. The sequel's exploration of technology and its impact on both the Immortal Warriors' mission and their ability to remain hidden from the modern world reflects the increasingly connected nature of contemporary society and the challenges that presents for beings who have relied on anonymity for their effectiveness. The film potentially examines how surveillance technology, social media, and global communication networks affect the Immortal Warriors' ability to operate, while also exploring how they adapt their methods to remain effective in a world where privacy and anonymity are increasingly difficult to maintain. The integration of modern technology into the action sequences and plot development must balance realism with the fantastical elements of the story, while also acknowledging how technological advancement affects the nature of the threats the Immortal Warriors face. The sequel's approach to technology also potentially explores how immortal beings adapt to rapid technological change while maintaining their essential mission and relationships across centuries of human development. The film's production design and location choices reflect the global scope of the story, while also serving narrative purposes that advance character development and plot progression. The selection of international filming locations potentially encompasses multiple continents and cultures, providing visual variety while also supporting the story's themes about the global nature of the Immortal Warriors' mission. The production design must balance practical considerations like budget and logistics with creative goals of creating visually distinctive and thematically appropriate environments for different scenes and character moments. The integration of historical elements into contemporary settings potentially allows the sequel to explore the Immortal Warriors' long history while maintaining focus on their current mission and relationships. The costume design builds upon the original film's approach to creating distinctive looks for each character, while potentially incorporating new elements that reflect character development. The marketing and promotional campaign for The Old Guard 2 faced the challenge of building upon the success of the original while managing expectations for a sequel that received, notably, mixed critical reception. Netflix's approach to promoting the sequel leveraged the platform's global reach while emphasizing the return of beloved characters and the introduction of new cast members like Uma Thurman and Henry Golding. The promotional materials highlighted the action sequences and international scope while attempting to address concerns about whether the sequel could match the original's quality and impact. The streaming platform's data-driven approach to content promotion allowed for targeted marketing to audiences who had engaged with the original film, while also attempting to attract new viewers through emphasis on the sequel's expanded scope and star power. The challenge lay in generating excitement for the sequel while managing expectations given the extended production timeline and the difficulty of recapturing the cultural moment that made the original film successful during the early pandemic period. Critical reception of The Old Guard 2 reflects the common challenges faced by sequels attempting to build upon successful originals while expanding scope and introducing new elements to established formulas. Reviews generally acknowledged the film's ambition and production values while expressing disappointment that it felt inferior to its predecessor, suggesting that the sequel struggled to capture the lightning-in-a-bottle quality that made the original resonate so strongly with audiences. Critics praised individual performances, particularly Charlize Theron's continued commitment to the role of Andy, while expressing concerns about pacing, plot, complexity, and whether the expanded mythology enhanced or detracted from the character relationships that form the original film's emotional core. The mixed critical response reflects broader industry challenges around franchise development and the difficulty of creating sequels that feel both familiar enough to satisfy existing fans and different enough to justify their existence as separate entities rather than simply extensions of the original story. The film's box office performance, measured primarily through Netflix's streaming metrics rather than traditional theatrical revenue, positioned The Old Guard 2 as a significant release for the platform while potentially falling short of the cultural impact achieved by the original film. Netflix's approach to measuring success through viewing hours, completion rates, and subscriber engagement provides different metrics than traditional box office performance, though the platform's relative secrecy about specific numbers makes direct comparisons challenging. The sequel's performance within Netflix's ecosystem reflects both the strength of the original film's fan base and the challenges of maintaining momentum for franchise properties in an increasingly crowded streaming landscape. International viewership patterns potentially reveal how well the sequel's expanded global scope resonated with different regional audiences, while also indicating whether the themes and characters maintained their universal appeal across different cultural contexts. The future of the Old Guard franchise depends largely on the reception and performance of the sequel, with the film's ending potentially setting up additional installments that could further explore the mythology and character relationships established across the first two films. The extended production timeline and mixed critical reception raise questions about Netflix's commitment to continuing the franchise while also highlighting the challenges inherent in developing successful sequel properties for streaming platforms. The film's exploration of themes like legacy, redemption, and the evolution of purpose across centuries provides natural foundations for future installments, while the introduction of new characters and mythological elements creates potential storylines for continued development. The success of any future installments would likely depend on learning from the sequel's reception, while finding ways to recapture the elements that made the original film successful without simply repeating previous formulas. The cultural impact of The Old Guard 2 extends beyond its immediate entertainment value to encompass broader discussions about representation, franchise development, and the evolution of action cinema in the streaming era. The film's approach to diversity and inclusion continues conversations started by the original while potentially influencing how other productions approach similar themes and casting choices. The sequel's exploration of immortality and purpose resonates with contemporary anxieties about meaning and legacy in an uncertain world, while providing escapist entertainment that allows audiences to explore these themes through fantastical scenarios. The film's treatment of violence and its consequences reflects ongoing cultural discussions about the role of action cinema in contemporary entertainment, while also examining how traditional genre elements can be adapted for modern sensibilities and global audiences. The technical achievements of The Old Guard 2 in areas like action choreography, visual effects, and production design contribute to the ongoing evolution of action cinema while potentially influencing how similar films approach the integration of practical and digital elements. The sequel's approach to depicting supernatural healing and other fantastical elements while maintaining a grounded tone provides a template for how genre films can balance spectacular elements with character-driven storytelling. The film's international production and multicultural casting reflect broader industry trends toward global content creation, while highlighting both the opportunities and challenges inherent in creating entertainment that resonates across different cultural contexts. The lesson learned from the sequel's production and reception will likely influence how streaming platforms and production companies approach similar franchise development projects in the future. In conclusion, The Old Guard 2 represents both the potential and pitfalls of sequel development in the contemporary entertainment landscape, demonstrating how even well-intentioned efforts to expand successful properties can struggle to recapture the elements that made their predecessors resonate with audiences. The film's commitment to character development, diversity, and thematic depth reflects the best intentions of contemporary blockbuster filmmaking, while its mixed reception highlights the ongoing challenges of franchise development in increasingly crowded and competitive entertainment environment. Victoria Mahoney's direction and the committed performances of the returning cast provide solid foundations for the sequel, while the introduction of new characters and expanded mythology create both opportunities and complications for the established narrative framework. The film's ultimate legacy will likely depend on how well it serves as a bridge between the original's success and any future installments, while also standing as an individual work that contributes meaningfully to the ongoing cultural conversations around representation, purpose, and the nature of heroism in contemporary action cinema.
The reintroduction of Quynh is not done hastily. Instead, the film builds her presence like an approaching storm. In quiet sequences scattered across different parts of the world, whispers of a mysterious figure intervening in violent conflicts reach the ears of governments and corporations alike. Entire armed groups are wiped out, not with the precise discipline of Andy's team, but with a brutal ferocity that feels both vengeful and chaotic. Survivors speak of a woman who cannot die, whose eyes burn with hatred, whose every strike feels less like the act of a soldier and more like punishment delivered by someone who has suffered beyond human comprehension. For centuries, Quynh drowned endlessly in her iron coffin, swallowed by the sea, and spat out again, only to die once more, over and over, until her mind fractured under the weight of pain. Now that she has been freed, she carries scars not visible on her body, but carved deep into her soul, and those scars bleed into her actions. The Immortals who once knew her as Andy's most trusted companion would barely recognize her now, for Quynh's smile has been replaced with a cold, unflinching glare, and her loyalty has shifted from protecting humanity to condemning it. She does not see mortals as innocent lives to be saved, but as a species that allowed her to suffer, a collective guilty of looking away while one of their kind was buried alive by fate. The film shows this transformation through haunting flashbacks, where Quynh's perspective under the waves is brought to life. The muffled silence, the crushing weight of the sea, scenes are not quick or stylized, but painfully drawn out, forcing the audience to share in her suffocation, her clawing desperation, and eventually her acceptance that no one would come. By the time she emerges into the modern world, her mission is not to rejoin Andy but to test her, to confront her with the question of why she did not save her, why she allowed her to suffer centuries of torment alone. This emotional weight hovers in every scene, even when the two women are not yet reunited. Andy, unknowingly sensing Quinn's approach, becomes restless, her leadership faltering as her buried guilt surfaces. Nile notices this crack in Andy's armor, and while she respects her mentor, she also challenges her, pushing her to admit the truth she refuses to speak aloud. That the thought of facing Quynh terrifies her not because she doubts her strength, but because she doubts her forgiveness. Meanwhile, Joe and Nicky serve as anchors to the story, their love providing both inspiration and a counterbalance to the growing darkness. They remind Nile and indirectly Andy that immortality does not have to mean endless suffering. It can also mean endless devotion, that in the face of centuries, love can be a shield. Yet, even their bond trembles in the shadow of Quinn's return, because they too know what it is to lose someone for lifetimes, and they cannot imagine the bitterness such a reunion would bring. The second act of the film uses this emotional groundwork to build tension, crafting not just an action-driven narrative, but one deeply rooted in betrayal, forgiveness, and the heavy burden of time. Quinn's path of vengeance inevitably draws attention from powerful corporations, some of which had already been hunting Andy's group for the secret of their immortality. Now, those forces see an opportunity. If the Immortals are divided, they can be destroyed or captured. This merging of personal conflict with global stakes sets the stage for a war, not just of weapons, but of ideologies. Quinn's wrath against Andy's hope, profit-driven corporations against the unyielding will of those who fight only for survival, and Nile's unshaken morality, clashing with the disillusionment of warriors who have seen too much. The result is a narrative tapestry where every thread, love, guilt, vengeance, and survival, is pulled tighter and tighter until it seems ready to snap. The turning point comes when Andy learns that Quynh is not only alive, but leaving behind a trail of destruction. What shakes her most is not the violence itself. After all, she has waded through oceans of blood across centuries, but the way Quinn's actions mirror her own darkest impulses. In a chilling sequence, Andy confronts a battlefield aftermath, a village decimated, its defenders slain with surgical brutality. Among the dead lie not just soldiers, but innocents caught in the crossfire, their eyes staring lifelessly at a sky that once promised protection. For Nile, who is still relatively new to immortality, this scene is unbearable. She rages at Andy, demanding to know how someone like him could commit such atrocities. And for the first time, she questions whether being immortal is truly a gift or simply a curse that magnifies human flaws. Andy, who has never been one to show weakness, does not answer directly. Instead, she walks silently through the carnage, her face betraying the heavy burden of recognition that this is Quinn's doing and that Quynh is the embodiment of every failure she has ever tried to bury. Through Nile's eyes, the audience is reminded of the stark moral dilemmas these immortals face. They fight wars to protect people, but wars are never clean, and the line between savior and executioner is always blurred. Nile's sense of justice collides with Andy's centuries of pragmatism, creating a rift that threatens to splinter the group even further. Joe and Nicky attempt to bridge the divide, gently reminding Nile that immortality is not about the power to save everyone, but the responsibility to try, even when the odds are impossible. Their words hold weight, but Nile's youthful anger reflects the audience's own unease. If immortality cannot stop evil, then what purpose does it truly serve? The brilliance of this act lies in its refusal to provide easy answers. Instead, it frames immortality not as a blessing or a curse, but as a mirror. Amplifying whatever lies inside the soul, love becomes eternal devotion, anger becomes endless fury, guilt becomes an unshakable chain. And as the group debates the meaning of their existence, Quynh draws ever closer, her shadow stretching across the globe. For Andy, the fear is no longer just about facing her friend, but about facing herself. Because Quynh represents the part of her that could not endure hope, the part that drowned in despair and rose reborn as vengeance. When Andy and Quynh finally meet, the reunion is anything but the heartfelt embrace that centuries of separation might have promised. souls lock, and in that silence lies an ocean of memories. Shared laughter from forgotten ages, battles fought side by side, whispered promises under starlit skies, and above all, the bond of sisters forged in fire and blood. But intertwined with those memories is the unspoken question that suffocates them both. Why did Andy not save her? Quynn's voice, when it finally cuts through the silence, is laced with venom sharpened by centuries of suffering. She does not yell. She does not rage. Instead, she speaks with a cold, measured calm that is far more terrifying, recounting the centuries she spent drowning. Her lungs filling with salt water, her body breaking again and again, her mind screaming for release that never came. Each word is a blade, and Andy feels every cut because she knows no excuse will ever be enough. Andy tries to explain that she searched, that she never stopped hoping, but Quynh interrupts with a single devastating truth. Hope is meaningless when it comes too late. The dialogue between them is not just a conversation, but a clash of ideologies. Andy clinging to the belief that even broken lives can still hold purpose. Quynh embodying the conviction that suffering erases any obligation to protect the very world that allowed it. And Nile, watching from the sidelines, becomes the moral compass of the audience. She cannot fathom the depth of Quyn's pain, yet she also cannot condone the path Quynh has chosen. Her voice trembles with conviction as she steps forward, declaring that vengeance against humanity will not heal wounds but only create more. Quynh, however, sees in Nile the same naivete she once held before centuries of torment burned it away. The scene crescendos not with violence, but with unbearable tension, as Andy is forced to choose. Will she stand against her sister to protect humanity, or will she allow her guilt to blind her? The brilliance of this confrontation lies in its emotional runs. The battle that follows, because inevitably swords and bullets clash, is not merely physical but symbolic. Every strike Andy delivers feels like a plea for forgiveness. Every counter from Quynh a rejection of that plea. Joe and Nicky fight to restrain Quyn's forces, mercenaries she has manipulated into following her, while Nile throws herself into the fray with youthful defiance. Booker, still weighed down by exile, reappears at this moment, his return both surprising and inevitable, for he too understands the pain of betrayal and longs for redemption. Together, the group struggles to hold their ground, but the emotional stakes loom larger than the physical. By the end of this battle, nothing is resolved. Quynh escapes, leaving behind devastation and unanswered questions, while Andy collapses under the weight of guilt that grows heavier with every passing moment. In the aftermath of Quyn's escape, the group finds themselves fractured not only by the physical wounds of battle, but by the deeper, invisible wounds carved into their trust and purpose. Andy withdraws into silence, her once unshakable leadership now eroded by the overwhelming guilt that has finally consumed her. For centuries, she had been the anchor, the one who held the team together through wars, plagues, and betrayals, but now the others sense her unraveling. Nile, despite her respect for Andy, grows increasingly frustrated by her refusal to open up. She argues that leadership is not about perfection, but about honesty, that Andy's silence is leaving them vulnerable at a time when they need unity the most. Joe and Nicky attempt to mediate, their voices calm but urgent, reminding Nile that immortality is not just measured in years, but in the weight of endless scars, and Andy's scars run deeper than anyone's. Yet Nile cannot let go of her conviction that Andy's avoidance is dangerous, not only for the group, but for the world. Booker's reappearance complicates matters further. His exile had been meant as punishment for his betrayal. Yet, in the face of Quyn's threat, his knowledge and experience become indispensable. Nile argues passionately for his reinstatement, insisting that they cannot afford to remain divided when facing an enemy who knows them as intimately as Quynh does. Andy resists at first, her trust in Booker shattered, but she eventually concedes. Not out of forgiveness, but necessity. This fragile truce highlights the fractured state of the Immortals. They are bound together by survival, but fractured by secrets and betrayals. Meanwhile, the outside world grows increasingly dangerous. Corporations, governments, and private armies, already aware of the Immortals' existence from the events of the first film, begin mobilizing. Quyn's violent campaign draws attention, and those with power see opportunity in capturing or controlling beings who cannot die. This global threat looms like a storm on the horizon, but the team is too fractured to face it head-on. The tension builds slowly, through quieter scenes that highlight their inner struggles. Nile shares moments with Joe and Nicky, learning from their centuries of love and companionship, drawing strength from their unshakable bond. Booker confides in Nile, admitting his regret for the betrayal and his longing for redemption, though he knows forgiveness will not come easily. Andy, meanwhile, isolates herself, haunted by visions of Quynh drowning endlessly, her face twisted in pain and hatred. These visions are not supernatural but born of guilt, and they drive Andy to the edge of despair. She begins to question whether her leadership is not only failing but actively harming the group, and for the first time, she considers stepping aside. Yet Nile refuses to let her give up, insisting that their purpose, whatever it may be, still matters, as immortality without direction is nothing but chaos. This clash between despair and hope, between old wounds and new convictions, becomes the central emotional core of the film, setting the stage for the choices that will define not only their survival, but the very meaning of their existence. As the narrative deepens, Quynh's philosophy begins to take shape, revealed not just through her actions, but through the conversations she has with those she manipulates into following her. Unlike Andy, who has always believed in fighting to preserve life, Quynh views humanity as a species unworthy of protection, a race that thrives on cruelty, exploitation, and destruction. In her eyes, the centuries of torment she endured are not simply the fault of fate, but a reflection of humanity's indifference. She argues that humans do not deserve saviors, that their suffering should be mirrored back upon them, and she recruits those who have also been broken by war, oppression, and betrayal. These followers, mortal though they are, see in Quynh a goddess of vengeance, someone who embodies their pain and gives it voice. Through them, the film explores the dangerous allure of vengeance, the way suffering can be twisted into justification for violence. This ideology contrasts sharply with Niles, who continues to believe in humanity's capacity for good despite its flaws. Nile becomes the counterpoint not only to Quynh but to Andy, reminding both that immortality does not absolve them of responsibility but intensifies it. The brilliance of the writing lies in how it refuses to paint either side as entirely right or wrong. Quynh's rage is justified by the unimaginable torment she suffered, and her critique of humanity's cruelty is not without truth. Yet her response, to inflict suffering in return, creates a cycle of violence that threatens to consume everything. Andy, caught in the middle, embodies the conflict between these two philosophies. She understands Quynh's pain more than anyone else, yet she also sees the danger in allowing that pain to define them. The emotional stakes are heightened when Quynh confronts Andy directly once more, this time not in battle but in words. She accuses Andy of hypocrisy, of pretending to protect humanity while allowing them to suffer endlessly in their wars and atrocities. Andy does not deny the truth of this accusation. Instead, she admits that their victories are small, that they cannot save everyone, but argues that the few lives they do save ripple outward in ways they may never fully see. It is this ripple effect that Nile clings to, the belief that small acts of good can accumulate across centuries, that their purpose is not measured in grand gestures, but in the lives quietly touched. The scene is powerful not because it resolves the conflict, but because it lays bare the raw, unresolved emotions that drive it. Quynh is not simply a villain. She is a reflection of what the Immortals could become if they surrendered to despair. Nile is not simply a savior. She is the embodiment of hope that may yet prove fragile. Andy is not simply a leader. She is a woman torn between love and guilt, hope and despair, trying desperately to hold together a family that is crumbling under the weight of eternity. This philosophical clash elevates the film beyond action, grounding every fight and every choice in a battle not just for survival but for meaning itself. The stakes rise further when the group discovers that Quynh has allied with a powerful corporation seeking to exploit immortality for profit. Unlike the scientists from the first film who sought to unlock immortality for supposed medical advancements, this corporation is more ruthless, driven entirely by greed and power. They see Quynh not as a partner but as a weapon, one that could destabilize governments, topple armies, and rewrite the balance of global power. Yet Quynh, cunning and bitter, uses them as much as they use her. She plays their game, accepting resources, technology, and soldiers, all while knowing that she can discard them the moment they outlive their usefulness. This uneasy alliance sets the stage for some of the film's most becomes a terrifying reminder that even immortals are not invincible when technology turns the world into a cage. Amid these escalating threats, the bond between Nile and Andy deepens. Nile pushes Andy to confront her guilt, to admit that she fears Quynh not because of her strength, but because of the truth she forces Andy to face, that even immortals are powerless against time and fate. Andy resists, clinging to silence, but Nile's persistence chips away at her walls. These quieter moments of dialogue balance the explosive action, reminding the audience that the real battle is not just against Quynh or the corporation, but within themselves. Joe and Nicky continue to serve as moral anchors, their love offering a vision of what immortality can be when it is embraced rather than feared. Yet even they struggle under the weight of Quynh's ideology, because they too have known despair, and they cannot deny that her words carry echoes of truth. The brilliance of this act lies in its ability to blend thrilling action with philosophical debate, making every bullet fired and every blade swung feel like an extension of the character's inner turmoil. As the conflict intensifies, Booker emerges as a surprisingly pivotal figure. Once branded a traitor for his betrayal, he now finds himself in a unique position to understand both Andy's despair and Quynh's rage. His own grief over losing his mortal family centuries ago mirrors Quynh's suffering, though in a different form, and his betrayal of the group stemmed not from malice but from desperation to escape the loneliness of immortality. This shared pain gives him an unexpected connection to Quynh, one that the others cannot replicate. In a tense sequence, Booker seeks out Quynh in secret, hoping to reason with her, to convince her that vengeance will not heal her wounds. The conversation that unfolds is one of the most emotionally charged in the film. Quynh sees in Booker a kindred spirit, someone who has also been broken by the endless march of time. For a moment, it seems as if she might listen, as if her icy resolve might thaw under the weight of shared sorrow. But ultimately, she rejects him, accusing him of weakness for seeking reconciliation rather than embracing the purity of vengeance. This rejection devastates Booker, but it also sparks a turning point within him. He realizes that while his pain is real, it does not have to define him, that immortality does not have to be a curse if he chooses to fight for something beyond himself. This moment of clarity redeems him in the eyes of the audience, and slowly, though not yet fully, in the eyes of his companions. Meanwhile, the corporation escalates its efforts, deploying entire armies against the Immortals. In one breathtaking action sequence, the group is ambushed in a European city, their battle unfolding across rooftops, narrow alleyways, and bustling streets. The choreography is brutal and intimate, showcasing the Immortals' centuries of skill, while also emphasizing their vulnerability against modern firepower. Nile, still adapting to her powers, proves herself in this battle, saving Andy's life in a moment that cements her place as a true member of the family. Yet the victory comes at a cost. Innocent civilians are caught in the crossfire, echoing Quynh's argument that their existence brings more harm than good. The Immortals retreat, bloodied and shaken, and the weight of their choices grows heavier. In the aftermath of the ambush, the group finds temporary refuge in a remote safe house, a location steeped in history, where artifacts from centuries past remind them of the lives they have lived and the battles they have fought. It is here that the film slows its pace, offering a much-needed reprieve from the chaos to delve into the emotional core of its characters. Around a flickering fire, the Immortals share stories, some light-hearted, some heartbreaking, each one a reminder of the vastness of their experiences and the humanity they still cling to despite their endless lives. Joe and Nicky recall the early days of their bond, when they were enemies who found love in the midst of bloodshed, their story serving as both inspiration and a bittersweet reminder of the thin line between hatred and love. Booker, for the first time, opens up fully about his betrayal, admitting not only his regret, but his fear that he is beyond forgiveness. Nile listens, her youthful empathy bridging the gap between his shame and the group's lingering mistrust. Andy remains quiet for much of the night, lost in thought, but when she finally speaks, her words cut deeper than any blade. She admits that she failed Quynh, that no excuse can ever erase the centuries of suffering her sister endured, and that perhaps she does not deserve forgiveness either. The vulnerability in her confession groups bond, even as the threat against them grows. Yet the reprieve is short-lived, for the corporation closes in once again, and Quynh, always a step ahead, prepares to unleash her most devastating strike yet. Yet, as dawn breaks over the safe house, the Immortals ready themselves, knowing that the coming battle will not only test their strength, but define their very purpose. The morning after their brief sanctuary in the safe house, the Immortals awaken to a world that seems quieter than it should be, an eerie calm that sets their nerves on edge. They have lived long enough to recognize the silence before a storm, and soon enough, that storm arrives in the form of a coordinated assault, unlike any they have faced before. The corporation, emboldened by Quynh's alliance, deploys an entire strike team equipped with advanced weaponry designed not merely to wound but to incapacitate. Explosives tear through the walls of the safe house, and the Immortals are forced into a brutal fight for survival, their centuries of skill clashing against modern technology. Andy, though weary and burdened by guilt, leads the charge, her instincts as sharp as ever, though every swing of her blade is accompanied by the unspoken knowledge that she may no longer be immortal. Nile fights fiercely at her side, her determination fueled not only by survival, but by a growing conviction that their mission, whatever form it takes, is worth protecting. Joe and Nicky move with the precision of lovers who have fought together for centuries, their bond making them nearly untouchable in the chaos of battle. Booker, though still carrying the weight of his betrayal, redeems himself in small acts of bravery, shielding his companions and taking blows meant for them. The choreography of the battle is not stylized, but raw, emphasizing the brutality of combat and the cost of survival. Civilians in the nearby town are caught in the crossfire, their screams echoing the very argument Quynh has made, that the Immortals bring destruction wherever they go. By the time the dust settles, the safe house is in ruins, and the group is once again forced to scatter, hunted not only by mercenaries, but by the ghosts of their own actions. The emotional toll is immense, and as they regroup in the aftermath, it becomes clear that their greatest battle is not against Quynh or the corporation, but against the despair that threatens to consume them from within. In the wake of the assault, the Immortals flee across borders, relying on ancient networks of allies and hidden caches built over centuries. Their journey takes them through remote landscapes and forgotten ruins, each location a reminder of the vast history they carry within themselves. These moments of travel are interspersed with conversations that dig deeper into their philosophies. Nile, who has grown bolder with every battle, questions Andy more directly than ever before, demanding to know why they continue to fight when the world seems determined to destroy itself. Andy's responses are fragmented, weighed down by her guilt over Quynh, but she admits that their purpose has never been clear. That they fight because they must, because to stop would mean surrendering to despair. This admission shakes Nile, who has always clung to the belief that there must be a greater reason for their existence, some divine plan or hidden meaning. The dialogue reveals the heart of the film's thematic struggle, the search for purpose in a life without end. Joe and Nicky, ever the voices of balance, remind Nile that meaning is not found in grand answers, but in the small choices they make every day. The lives they save, the people they inspire, the love they share. Booker, in his quiet moments, reflects on his centuries of regret, acknowledging that he once sought escape from immortality, but now realizes that escape is not the answer. Instead, he longs for redemption, not through forgiveness from others, but through action, by proving that he can still protect the family he betrayed. These philosophical exchanges deepen the emotional core of the story, showing that immortality is not just about surviving centuries, but about enduring the weight of meaninglessness and choosing to create meaning anyway. Yet even as they struggle with these questions, the external threat looms larger. Quynh continues to manipulate the corporation, feeding their greed while steering their power toward her own ends. She orchestrates a global crisis, pushing humanity to the brink of chaos, forcing Andy and her team into a confrontation they can no longer delay. The confrontation comes sooner than they expect in a city teetering on the edge of collapse. Quynh, wielding both her immortality and the resources of the corporation, engineers a spectacle of destruction meant not only to draw the Immortals out, but to make a statement to the world. Entire districts are set ablaze, riots erupt as mercenaries clash with civilians, and the chaos spreads like wildfire through the streets. Into this Inferno step Andy and her team, their presence both a necessity and a curse. They fight through the chaos not just against mercenaries, but against the ideology Quynh has unleashed. The belief that immortals are gods of vengeance rather than guardians of life. The battle is sprawling, visceral, and heartbreaking. Nile, still clinging to her hope in humanity, risks her life to save civilians even as bullets fly around her, embodying the belief that every life matters, no matter how small in the scale of centuries. Andy, torn between love for Quynh and duty to her team, fights with a ferocity that feels desperate, as if each strike is both a plea for forgiveness and a denial of despair. Joe and Nicky stand back to back, their love a beacon amid the chaos, while Booker finds his redemption in action, saving Nile in a moment that finally earns him a measure of trust from the group. Yet the centerpiece of the battle is the duel between Andy and Quynh, a clash not only of blades but of ideologies. Their fight is brutal, intimate, and devastating, every strike laced with centuries of shared history and unspoken words. Quynh taunts Andy with every blow, accusing her of betrayal, of weakness, of clinging to hope that no longer exists. Andy responds not with denial, but with sorrow, admitting her failures but refusing to surrender to despair. The duel ends not with victory, but with a stalemate. Both women bloodied and broken, their conflict unresolved. Quynh escapes once more, leaving behind a city in ruins, in a world beginning to question whether immortals are protectors or harbingers of doom. The team, battered and shaken, realizes that the final confrontation is inevitable, that Quynh will not stop until she has forced Andy to confront the deepest truth of their existence. After the devastation in the city, the Immortals retreat once again, but this time the fractures within their group feel more dangerous than the enemies outside. Andy is haunted not only by her failure to stop Quynh, but by the growing fear that she no longer knows what she is fighting for. The guilt has eaten away at her resolve, and though Nile continues to push her toward hope, the weight of centuries presses down too heavily. The safe house they find this time is a monastery hidden high in the mountains, a place where Andy once sought refuge long ago, and the walls themselves seem to whisper of forgotten prayers and lost faith. Here, the film slows again, allowing for quiet character-driven moments that deepen the emotional resonance. Nile confides in Booker, admitting that she fears Andy may not survive the coming battle, not because her immortality is failing, but because her spirit is breaking. Booker listens with the empathy of someone who has also walked the edge of despair, and he tells Nile that sometimes immortals need the living to remind them why they continue. His words reflect his own slow journey toward redemption, a recognition that though he may never undo his betrayal, he can still contribute by guiding the next generation. Joe and Nicky, meanwhile, share a rare moment of vulnerability, admitting to each other that even their love, as eternal as it feels, has been strained by the endlessness of their existence. Yet rather than weakening them, this honesty strengthens their bond, reminding them that love is not about perfection but perseverance. Andy spends much of this time alone, wandering the monastery halls, haunted by visions of Quynh. In her dreams, she sees her sister beneath the waves, eyes filled with rage, accusing her again and again of abandonment. These dreams blur into waking moments, and Andy begins to question her sanity, wondering if immortality itself has finally driven her beyond the edge. It is Nile who grounds her, sitting with her in the candlelit silence of the monastery and telling her that forgiveness may never come from Quynh. But that does not mean Andy must surrender. Nile insists that their purpose, however unclear, must be chosen rather than discovered, that they have the power to decide what their immortality means. This conversation marks a turning point, planting a fragile seed of resolve in Andy's heart, even as the storm of confrontation looms closer. Quynh, meanwhile, grows more dangerous with every passing moment. The corporation she has allied with begins to fracture under her influence, as executives and scientists realize that they cannot control the very force they sought to exploit. Some attempt to rein her in, believing they can weaponize her without consequence, but their arrogance costs them dearly. In one chilling sequence, Quynh turns on her supposed allies, slaughtering those who dared to think they could command her, leaving behind only those willing to bow to her vision of vengeance. She emerges not as a pawn, but as the leader of a new faction, a cult-like force that sees her as a messianic figure, a goddess of retribution. These scenes highlight her charisma as much as her brutality, showing that she is not only a warrior, but a leader capable of bending others to her will. The world begins to take notice. News reports show images of destruction, whispered rumors of an immortal woman leading armies into chaos. Fear spreads across nations, and governments debate whether these beings should be treated as weapons of mass destruction. Humanity, already fractured by its own divisions, begins to unravel under the pressure of Quinn's campaign. Against this backdrop, Andy and her team prepare for the inevitable final confrontation. They know now that stopping Quynh is not simply about survival, but about preventing the collapse of the fragile balance between humanity and immortality. The weight of this responsibility presses on each of them, but it is Nile who carries it most fiercely. She becomes the voice of conviction, reminding the group that their immortality is not about what they cannot die from, but about what they choose to live for. Her speeches are not grand or theatrical, but heartfelt, filled with the kind of clarity that only someone still close to mortality can possess. For Andy, these words rekindle a spark of hope, though it remains buried beneath layers of guilt and sorrow. As the group sets out toward their final clash with Quynh, the film builds a sense of inevitability. Every step feels heavier, every glance between them filled with unspoken words, as if they all know that some of them may not walk away from what is coming. The stage is set for a confrontation not just of strength, but of ideology, love against vengeance, hope against despair, and survival against the crushing weight of eternity.
The psychological depth explored in The Old Guard, too, delves into territories that the original film only touched upon, examining how immortality affects not just individual characters, but their collective psyche as a group that has functioned together for centuries. Andy's mental state receives particular scrutiny as the sequel reveals how millennia of leadership and the weight of countless decisions have shaped her worldview and approach to both conflict and companionship. The film explores her relationship with memory, showing how someone who has lived through countless historical events processes trauma, loss, and the repetitive nature of human conflict across different eras. Her interactions with newer team members reveal layers of protective instinct mixed with the weariness that comes from having trained and lost countless allies over the centuries, creating a complex dynamic where her desire to nurture and protect conflicts with her knowledge that attachment inevitably leads to pain. The sequel examines how Andy's immortality has affected her ability to form deep connections, showing how someone who has outlived civilizations struggles with concepts of permanence and meaning in relationships that, from her perspective, are inherently temporary. The film reveals through flashbacks and character moments how her leadership style has evolved across different historical periods, adapting to changing social structures and moral frameworks while maintaining core principles about protecting humanity. Her relationship with violence becomes a central focus as the sequel explores how someone who has fought in countless wars across millennia views the necessity of combat versus the possibility of peaceful resolution. The psychological impact of bearing responsibility for humanity's protection while being unable to prevent major tragedies and injustices throughout history creates internal conflicts that manifest in her interactions with both enemies and allies throughout the sequel's narrative. The exploration of Joe and Nicky's centuries-spanning relationship in The Old Guard 2 provides a unique lens through which to examine how love and partnership evolve when freed from the constraints of mortal lifespans, yet bound by the shared burden of their immortal mission. The sequel delves deep into their origin story, potentially revealing how two warriors from opposing sides of historical conflicts came to find not just love, but a partnership that has endured through centuries of social change, religious persecution, and evolving cultural attitudes toward same-sex relationships. Their relationship serves as both anchor and compass for the team, providing stability and emotional grounding, while also demonstrating how immortal beings navigate the complexities of maintaining intimacy across vastly different historical periods and social contexts. The film explores how they have supported each other through periods of doubt, trauma, and the existential questions that plague all immortal beings, while also showing how their bond has strengthened rather than weakened over time. Their communication patterns, developed over centuries of partnership, provide insight into how immortal relationships differ from mortal ones, with the luxury of unlimited time creating both deeper understanding and unique challenges around growth and change. The sequel examines how they balance their individual identities with their coupled identity, showing how each maintains personal autonomy and growth while also functioning as part of an inseparable pair. Their relationship with the newer team members reveals how they serve as mentors and examples, demonstrating the possibility of finding lasting love and meaning even within the context of immortal existence. The film's treatment of their romance respects both its groundbreaking representation and its narrative function, using their relationship to explore themes of commitment, sacrifice, and the ways that love can provide purpose and meaning even in the face of eternal existence. Nile's continued journey of adaptation to immortality receives extensive development in The Old Guard 2, as the sequel explores the long-term psychological and emotional impact of transitioning from mortal military service to immortal warrior status. Her military background provides both advantages and complications as she adapts to the team's methods and philosophy, bringing modern tactical knowledge and contemporary moral frameworks to a group that has operated across multiple historical periods with their own evolved ethical codes. The film examines her struggle to maintain connections to her former life while accepting that her immortality fundamentally changes her relationship with family, friends, and the institutions she once served. Her perspective as the newest immortal allows the sequel to explore questions about purpose and identity that the other characters have long since resolved or internalized, providing a fresh lens through which to examine the implications of eternal life. The sequel shows her grappling with the responsibility that comes with her abilities while also dealing with the isolation that immortality creates as she watches her mortal connections age and change while she remains physically unchanged. Her relationship with technology and contemporary culture provides opportunities for both humor and serious exploration of how immortal beings adapt to rapidly changing social and technological landscapes. The film explores her role as a bridge between the team's ancient wisdom and contemporary realities, showing how her modern perspective influences their approach to current threats, while also revealing how centuries of experience inform their understanding of recurring human patterns. Her development as a warrior involves not just physical training, but philosophical and emotional growth as she learns to balance the immediate demands of their mission with a long-term perspective that immortality requires. Booker's redemption arc in The Old Guard 2 serves as a complex exploration of betrayal, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption within relationships that are meant to last forever. The sequel addresses the aftermath of his actions in the first film while examining how immortal beings navigate concepts of justice, punishment, and reconciliation when traditional time frames for healing and forgiveness are irrelevant. His isolation and the psychological impact of separation from the only family he has known for centuries provides insight into how immortal beings cope with loneliness and the absence of the connections that give their existence meaning. The film explores his internal struggle with guilt and self-recrimination, while also showing his efforts to prove himself worthy of rejoining the team and regaining their trust. His relationship with each team member receives individual attention as the sequel shows how different personalities and centuries of shared experience influence their willingness to forgive and their expectations for making amends. The sequel examines how someone who has lived for centuries processes regret and works toward redemption, showing how immortal perspectives on time and consequence differ from mortal approaches to similar situations. His technical skills and knowledge of contemporary systems provide practical value to the team's mission, while also serving as a way for him to contribute meaningfully to their success and demonstrate his commitment to their shared values. The film uses her character to examine questions about immortal politics and the possibility of larger organizations or structures among immortal beings that the established team has either been unaware of or deliberately avoided. Her presence forces the team to confront questions about their own choices and methods while also potentially providing access to resources, knowledge, or capabilities that could enhance their effectiveness or present new moral dilemmas. Henry Golding's character brings a different energy and perspective to the immortal mythology, representing either a newly awakened immortal or someone who has remained hidden from the established team for reasons that become clear as the sequel's plot develops. His character serves to explore themes of identity, belonging, and the process of discovering one's place within the larger context of immortal existence and responsibility. The film utilizes his acting abilities and screen presence to create a character who must navigate the complexities of immortal life while also dealing with the immediate demands of the threats and conflicts that drive the sequel's plot. His relationship with the established team members reveals different aspects of their personalities and approaches to mentorship, guidance, and the integration of new immortals into their group dynamic and operational methods. The sequel explores how his background and personal history inform his approach to immortality and his understanding of the responsibilities and opportunities that come with his condition. His character arc involves both personal growth and practical adaptation, as he learns to function within the team structure while also contributing his own skills, perspectives, and capabilities to their mission and effectiveness. The film examines how different personalities and backgrounds adapt to the realities of immortal existence, showing how individual approaches to eternal life can vary significantly while still serving the larger purpose of protecting humanity. His interactions with both established team members and other new characters provide opportunities for both conflict and collaboration that advance the plot, while also exploring the social dynamics of immortal groups and the challenges of maintaining effective working relationships across centuries. Shared experience. The villain or antagonist structure in The Old Guard 2 appears to represent a more complex and potentially more personal threat than the corporate and governmental forces that the team faced in the original film, suggesting enemies who understand the immortal condition and have specifically developed methods and capabilities to counter the team's advantages. The sequel explores how threats to immortal beings differ from threats to normal humans, requiring enemies who can anticipate their healing abilities, combat experience, and tactical knowledge while also understanding their emotional vulnerabilities and psychological pressure points. The film's approach to antagonists appears to involve characters who have studied the immortal team extensively, potentially across multiple encounters or historical periods, creating adversaries who represent genuine challenges rather than simply obstacles to overcome through superior force or tactic. These enemies understand that defeating immortal warriors requires attacking not just their physical capabilities, but their emotional bonds, moral convictions, and sense of purpose that motivates their protective mission toward humanity. The sequel examines how villains might exploit the immortal condition itself, using the team's longevity, accumulated losses, and psychological vulnerabilities against them in ways that purely physical threats cannot achieve. The antagonist's methods potentially involve temporal manipulation, historical knowledge, or access to other immortal beings who can match the team's capabilities, while lacking their moral constraints or protective philosophy. The film explores how enemies who understand immortality approach concepts of victory and defeat differently than those who operate within mortal timeframes and limitations, creating conflicts that extend beyond immediate physical confrontation to longer-term campaigns of psychological and emotional warfare. The sequel's examination of historical context and the immortal team's involvement in major historical events provides opportunities to explore how their mission and methods have evolved across different time periods, while also revealing previously unknown aspects of their past actions and consequences. The film potentially shows their involvement in historical conflicts, social movements, and major events that have shaped human civilization, revealing both their successes and failures in protecting humanity across centuries of intervention. These historical flashbacks or revelations serve multiple narrative purposes, providing character development while also establishing the stakes and consequences of their current mission by showing how past actions continue to influence present circumstances. The sequel explores how immortal beings navigate changing moral frameworks and social structures across different historical periods, showing how their core mission of protecting humanity has adapted to different definitions of threat, justice, and appropriate intervention. The film examines how their understanding of human nature and social development has evolved through direct observation of historical patterns, cycles, and recurring themes that might not be apparent to beings with shorter lifespans. Their historical perspective provides both wisdom and burden as they recognize patterns in current events, while also dealing with the frustration of watching humanity repeat mistakes that they have witnessed multiple times throughout history. The sequel potentially reveals how their involvement in historical events has shaped not just human development, but their own evolution as characters and as a group, showing how centuries of shared experience have created both deep bonds and potential sources of conflict within the team structure. The film's exploration of sacrifice and loss takes on unique dimensions when dealing with immortal characters who cannot die from physical wounds but who face other forms of loss and separation that can be equally devastating within the context of eternal existence. The sequel examines how immortal beings cope with the loss of mortal connections, the pain of watching loved ones age and die while they remain unchanged, and the emotional toll of forming relationships that they know are temporary from their perspective, even if they last entire human lifetimes. The theme of sacrifice extends beyond physical risk to encompass the emotional and psychological costs of their mission, showing how protecting humanity requires immortal beings to sacrifice normal relationships, personal desires, and individual fulfillment in service of their larger purpose. The film explores how different team members have adapted to these realities of loss and sacrifice, showing various coping mechanisms and philosophical approaches to finding meaning and purpose despite the inherent sadness of immortal existence. The sequel potentially reveals moments from their past when team members have been separated, lost, or presumed dead, exploring how immortal beings grieve and process loss when traditional concepts of death and permanence do not apply to their own condition. Their approach to risk and danger differs fundamentally from mortal perspectives, as they must weigh the possibility of capture, torture, or indefinite separation against the importance of their mission and the people they are trying to protect. The film examines how the knowledge that they will outlive everyone they care about affects their willingness to form new connections and their approach to relationships with both team members and the broader human population they serve. The sequel's treatment of identity and self-discovery explores how immortal beings maintain sense of self across centuries of experience, social change, and personal growth, while also adapting to new challenges and evolving understanding of their purpose and capabilities. Each character's journey of self-discovery occurs across timescales that dwarf normal human development, creating unique challenges around maintaining consistency of identity while also allowing for growth and change across literally centuries of experience and learning. The film examines how immortal beings balance the wisdom and perspective that comes from extensive experience with the need to remain flexible and adaptable to new situations and changing circumstances that require fresh approaches and thinking. Their relationships with their own past selves and past decisions create complex internal dynamics as they must live with the consequences of choices made decades or centuries earlier, while also continuing to grow and evolve as individuals and as a team. The sequel explores how different characters have maintained their core identities while also adapting to changing social norms, moral frameworks, and practical realities across the historical periods they have lived through. The film potentially shows how their understanding of themselves and their mission has evolved through encounters with other immortals, major historical events, and the continuous process of learning and adaptation that defines their existence. Their approach to personal growth and self-improvement takes on different meanings when viewed from the perspective of beings who have unlimited time to develop their capabilities, understand their motivations, and refine their approaches to both individual fulfillment and collective mission success. The action sequences in The Old Guard 2 serve multiple narrative functions beyond pure spectacle, using carefully choreographed combat to reveal character relationships, advance plot points, and explore the unique tactical advantages and vulnerabilities that come with the immortal condition. The sequel builds upon the original film's innovative approach to action choreography by incorporating the characters' healing abilities into their fighting styles in ways that create visually distinctive and strategically interesting combat sequences. Each character's individual fighting style reflects their historical background, personal preferences, and centuries of combat experience, creating unique approaches to violence that serve both practical and character development purposes within the narrative structure. The film's action design must balance the spectacular nature expected from a big-budget sequel with the grounded, realistic tone that distinguished the original from more fantastical superhero properties, maintaining believability while also showcasing the unique capabilities that Immortality provides. The integration of new characters into the established action framework requires choreography that accommodates different fighting styles and capabilities while maintaining the cohesive team dynamic that made the original film's action sequences effective and memorable. The sequel's action sequences also serve to establish threat levels and stakes by showing how different enemies and challenges require different tactical approaches and levels of coordination among the team members. The film explores how immortal beings approach combat differently than mortals, incorporating their knowledge that they can survive wounds that would kill normal humans, while also dealing with the tactical implications of enemies who understand and can exploit their particular vulnerabilities and psychological pressure points. The cinematography and visual style of The Old Guard 2 builds upon the distinctive aesthetic established by the original film while potentially expanding into new visual territories that reflect the sequel's broader scope and different directorial sensibilities under Victoria Mahoney's guidance. The film's visual language must balance intimate character moments with large-scale action sequences while maintaining visual coherence across multiple international locations and potentially different historical time periods that the story explores through flashbacks or other narrative devices. The sequel's color palette and lighting design serve both aesthetic and narrative purposes, creating distinctive visual identities for different locations, time periods, and emotional states, while also supporting the film's themes and character development through visual metaphor and symbolism. The camera work and editing style support the film's pacing and emotional rhythms while also enhancing the effectiveness of action sequences through careful attention to geography, momentum, and the clear communication of tactical information to audiences. The integration of practical and digital effects requires seamless blending that maintains the grounded tone while also showcasing the supernatural elements of the characters' abilities and the threats they face throughout the sequel's plot. The film's aspect ratio, framing choices, and compositional strategies reflect both practical considerations about different viewing platforms and creative decisions about how to best serve the story's emotional and narrative needs. The visual style must also accommodate the international scope of the production while maintaining a cohesive aesthetic that serves the story rather than simply showcasing different exotic locations for their own sake. The production design and set decoration in The Old Guard 2 serve crucial narrative functions by creating environments that support character development, advance plot points, and provide visual information about the world in which these immortal characters operate. The sequel's expanded scope requires production design that can accommodate multiple international locations while maintaining visual coherence and supporting the story's themes about global responsibility and cultural diversity. The design of action sequences locations must balance practical considerations about safety and logistics with creative goals of creating visually distinctive and tactically interesting environments for combat and dramatic scenes. The film's approach to historical accuracy in flashback sequences or period elements requires careful research and attention to detail, while also serving the story's emotional and thematic needs rather than simply showcasing historical knowledge for its own sake. The integration of contemporary technology and modern environments with the characters' ancient origins and traditional weapons creates visual contrasts that support themes about adaptation, tradition, and the intersection of old and new approaches to problem solving. The production design must also accommodate the practical needs of complex action sequences while creating environments that feel authentic and lived in, simply constructed for the purposes of filming. The sequel's sets and locations serve as character elements in their own right, providing information about the Immortal team's resources, capabilities, and approach to maintaining security and secrecy while operating in an increasingly connected and monitored world. The costume design in The Old Guard 2 serves multiple functions beyond simple aesthetic appeal, providing character information, supporting practical action sequence requirements, and reflecting the film's themes about identity, adaptation, and the intersection of historical and contemporary influences. Each character's wardrobe reflects their individual personality, historical background, and current role within the team, while also accommodating the practical demands of complex fight choreography and stunt work. The sequel's costume design must balance the iconic elements that audiences expect from returning characters with evolution and growth that reflects their development between films and throughout the sequel's narrative arc. The integration of modern tactical gear with traditional weapons and personal style elements creates visual languages that communicate information about each character's approach to their mission and their relationship with both their immortal condition and contemporary reality. The film's approach to costume design across different international locations and potentially different time periods requires attention to cultural authenticity, while also serving the story's dramatic and thematic needs rather than simply showcasing different cultural traditions for visual variety. The costume design also serves practical story functions by providing opportunities for character moments, supporting stealth and infiltration sequences, and creating visual distinctions between different factions and groups within the sequel's plot structure. The evolution of each character's look throughout the film potentially reflects their internal journey and character development, while also responding to the practical demands of different situations and environments they encounter during their mission. The film's approach to violence and its consequences represents a crucial element of the sequel's moral and thematic framework, examining how immortal beings navigate the necessity of combat while also dealing with the psychological and emotional toll that centuries of conflict create. The sequel explores how each character has developed their own relationship with violence based on their historical experiences, personal philosophy, and role within the team structure, creating different approaches to conflict resolution and the use of force in various situations. The film's treatment of violence must balance the entertainment expectations of action cinema with meaningful exploration of the moral complexities and psychological impact of combat, especially for beings who have been warriors across multiple centuries and cultural contexts. The sequel examines how the Immortal team's approach to violence has evolved across different historical periods and social contexts, showing how changing definitions of justice, proportionality, and appropriate force have influenced their methods and decision-making processes. The film explores the difference between violence as necessity and violence as choice, showing how immortal beings with extensive combat experience navigate situations where force might be required while also considering alternatives and long-term consequences of their actions. The psychological impact of centuries of combat receives attention as the sequel shows how different characters cope with trauma, guilt, and the cumulative emotional toll of repeated exposure to conflict and loss throughout their extended lifespans. The film's choreography and visual presentation of violence serves narrative purposes by revealing character relationships, advancing plot points, and exploring the tactical and strategic thinking that guides the Immortal team's approach to different types of threats and conflicts. The sequel's exploration of family dynamics among the Immortal team delves into how chosen family structures function when freed from traditional constraints of blood relations, mortality, and conventional social frameworks while also bound by shared mission and literally centuries of shared experience. The film examines how different characters have found their place within the team structure and how those relationships have evolved across extended periods of time, conflict, and personal growth. The concept of family takes on unique meanings when applied to immortal beings who have outlived countless blood relatives and who have formed bonds that span centuries and multiple historical periods with shared challenges and victories. The sequel explores how the team navigates internal conflicts, disagreements about methods or priorities, and personal tensions while maintaining the trust and cooperation necessary for their missions, effectiveness, and their collective survival. The integration of new characters into this established family dynamic requires careful attention to how existing relationships adapt and evolve to accommodate new personalities, perspectives, and capabilities within the group structure. The film examines how concepts of loyalty, responsibility, and obligation function within immortal family structures, where traditional expectations about duty and commitment take on different meanings when viewed from the perspective of eternal existence. The sequel potentially reveals how the team has dealt with loss, separation, and reunion throughout their history, showing how immortal family bonds can heal from trauma and distance, while also acknowledging that some changes may be permanent. The exploration of family dynamics also includes examination of how the team's relationships affect their individual identity and personal growth, showing how belonging to this unique family structure both supports and potentially constrains individual development and self-discovery. The film's treatment of hope and despair in the context of immortal existence provides crucial emotional grounding for characters who must find meaning and motivation across literally endless lifespans. While dealing with the recurring patterns of human conflict and suffering they are tasked to prevent. The sequel explores how different characters maintain hope and purpose despite witnessing countless cycles of war, injustice, and human cruelty across centuries of intervention attempts, showing various philosophical and psychological approaches to finding meaning in eternal existence. The film examines how immortal beings cope with the knowledge that their individual actions, no matter how successful, cannot permanently solve the fundamental problems of human nature and social organization that create the threats they are dedicated to fighting. The sequel potentially shows moments of profound despair and doubt when characters question whether their mission has any lasting impact or meaning, balanced against moments of renewed purpose and commitment that demonstrate the resilience and determination that enable them to continue their work. The exploration of hope includes examination of how the team's relationships with each other provide emotional support and motivation during periods of doubt or discouragement, showing how their chosen family structure serves as both anchor and inspiration for continued effort. The film's approach to these themes requires careful balance between acknowledging the legitimate reasons for despair that immortal existence might create while also demonstrating the sources of hope and meaning that enable the characters to continue their protective mission with dedication and effectiveness. The sequel examines how different characters have found personal sources of meaning and motivation that complement their shared mission, showing how individual approaches to finding purpose within immortal existence can vary while still contributing to collective effectiveness and emotional health. The relationship between the immortal team and contemporary technology represents both practical challenges and thematic opportunities, as the sequel explores how beings with centuries of experience adapt to rapidly changing technological landscapes while maintaining their effectiveness and secrecy. The film examines how surveillance technology, social media, global communication networks, and digital tracking systems affect the team's ability to operate without detection, while also potentially providing new tools and capabilities that enhance their mission effectiveness. The sequel explores how immortal beings approach learning and adaptation when faced with technological changes that occur much more rapidly than the social and cultural changes they have previously navigated throughout their extended lifespans. The integration of modern technology into their traditional methods and weapons creates both opportunities for enhanced effectiveness and vulnerabilities that enemies might exploit if they understand the team's reliance on or adaptation to contemporary systems. The film potentially shows how different team members have different relationships with technology based on their personalities, backgrounds, and individual approaches to change and adaptation, creating both cooperation and tension within the group dynamic. The sequel examines how technology affects the team's relationships with the broader human population they protect, potentially creating new opportunities for understanding human behavior and social patterns, while also creating distance and barriers that complicate their connection to the people they serve. The film's approach to technology must balance realistic portrayal of contemporary capabilities with the story's fantastical elements, while also serving the narrative's themes about adaptation, tradition, and the intersection of ancient wisdom with modern innovation. The sequel potentially explores how technological advancement affects the nature of the threats the team faces and the methods required to address those threats effectively. The film's examination of cultural diversity and international perspectives reflects both the global nature of streaming content and the inherent international character of immortal beings who would naturally have experience across multiple cultures and historical periods. The sequel's casting and location span multiple continents and cultures, providing opportunities to explore how different cultural frameworks approach concepts like duty, sacrifice, honor, and the relationship between individual action and collective responsibility. The film examines how the immortal team's diverse backgrounds contribute to their effectiveness while also potentially creating tensions or disagreements about methods, priorities, and appropriate responses to different types of threats and situations. The integration of different cultural perspectives requires careful attention to authentic representation, while also serving the story's dramatic and thematic needs rather than simply showcasing cultural diversity for its own sake. The sequel potentially explores how different cultural attitudes toward death, violence, authority, and social responsibility inform individual team members' approaches to their immortal condition and their shared mission. The film's international scope creates opportunities to examine how global interconnection affects both the threats the team faces and the methods available for addressing those threats effectively. The sequel's approach to cultural diversity must balance respect for different traditions and perspectives with the practical demands of creating a coherent narrative that serves the story's emotional and thematic goals. The exploration of international perspectives also provides opportunities to examine how immortal beings navigate changing cultural norms and social structures across different regions and time periods while maintaining their core mission and values.